Welcome to another episode of Pint of Scotch, where every sip brings a new perspective and every conversation is a blend of insight and inspiration. Today, we're talking about one of my biggest frustrations working in IT, and I won't lie, this all spawned from a rant that I had on Slack with my good friends. So, what's it about? It's the uncanny ability for enterprise IT to hear about new ways of working, dream up a huge project to implement it, then fail spectacularly in its delivery because they never really grasped its basic principles. And the cultural change is kind of hard in enterprise. I'm Brian Ross. I'm your host for today. With me are two of my best friends, Gotham Palapa and JT Perry. It's great to have you both with me. Gotham, why don't you give yourself an intro?
Um, Happy to be here as always. Love the rant sessions. I'm Gautam Palapa. I'm a modernization expert. I have over 20 years of experience driving enterprise transformations, and I've actually felt the pain of really good technology being implemented and gone to shit. So I would really love to hear your thoughts and your stories, and looking forward to this conversation.
And JT?
JT Perry, really glad to be back again. Also have 20 years of experience in technology leadership, modernization, and even held the role of business transformation at one point. Yeah, the proverbial gun is loaded and the rant bullets are ready to be fired. So let's dive in.
Superb. All right. So we've been hearing an increasing amount about new ways of working, and I'm seeing on social media kind of rising traffic about the death of Agile. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure what to think about that. Gotham, you're closer to this. What's your thoughts? Is Agile still with us? Is it still all great and singing, or do we think there's problems at home with Agile?
So obviously, everything that you hear on social media is going to either be hyperbole or it's going to be taken out of context. So I have heard about this wave that is coming about where there are so many articles that talk about the death of Agile, right? So let's start with why it came up. So as we all know, Agile started actually as a rebellion against the rigid bureaucratic processes of traditional software development. That's the true reason why agility started. It emphasized stability, customer collaboration, and iterative processes. And unfortunately, the irony is that many enterprises took these agile principles and implemented them and converted them into the rigid frameworks, the very thing that agile was rebelling against. And this is why now you're seeing the death of agile is making waves. It's a sentiment that I believe reflects a growing frustration within the industry. But what I want to emphasize is it's important for us to distinguish the death of agile as a methodology versus the disillusionment of how agile has been implemented in many of these enterprises. Uh, so I'll just give an example of a stat that I read recently. It's from the Agile report, the recent most one, which says that 95% of organizations they claim to practice agility. That's huge. That's like almost 100%, right? Like almost everyone says that they are going to practice agility and they are doing it in some way, shape, or form. But only 36% of those that were polled reported that it has led to improved project predictability and to value. So, this gap between adoption and effectiveness is a clear indicator that something has gone wrong. So, what Agile has become is it started off as a buzzword, like almost every technology that we use today, unfortunately. It started off as a buzzword, something that was nice to have. And then enterprises started seeing startups and people who were in Greenfield getting a huge amount of benefit out of it. And so they said, we need to do this Agile. And so they took it and what was meant to be a flexible framework, it converted into a bureaucratic box ticking enterprise. Instead of focusing on the spirit of what agility was, we started looking at the rituals and mandating and having rule books that we should follow the ceremonies and processes. And unfortunately, you know what happens when make it so rigid that you are looking at every stage gate of the process? That's called waterfall. So and we've seen this with the rise of frameworks like SAFe and Prince2, which have been both a blessing and a curse in my mind. SAFe, it provides a structure for scaling agility across large organizations, like the Scaled Agile framework. And the focus is more upon how to run these various projects and how to run these various ceremonies and activities and processes rather than the spirit behind it. And so it's become that security blanket for executives and leaders who want to claim that they agile while they don't want to change the way that they think or operate. And the same thing with Prince too, right? It's attempted to blend that agile principles with traditional waterfall methodology, leading to a cumbersome, inefficient, and bastardized hybrid that often leaves teams stuck in a paradox, trying to be flexible and rigid at the same time. I mean, pick one. You can't be both. Can't be everything to everyone. And that's what created this monstrosity of waterfall agile or agile approach that it requires extensive upfront planning, documentation, and all those things. So you're spending cycles and cycles just talking rather than doing. And so all these things, we tend to do an amazing job of taking really cool technologies and really good principles and forgetting the spirit of what has to be done, and then putting an enterprise spin on it and saying, oh, here's a run book and a rule book. This is a manual, a 1,000-page manual about how thou shalt run these processes. And I don't care whether you're certified in it or not. And if you're not certified, and this is the other thing that probably we can talk about later, is here's a bunch of TPMs, project managers that we're going to take. We're going to run them through a 2-day workshop and certify them with a piece of paper and call them certified Scrum Masters. And they are going to go forth and agile everything. So that's kind of what we do in enterprises. I'm going to stop this rant because I can go on and on about this. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
You know, I love it. I love it. This go forth and agile. Like it sounds magnificent, and we've all seen it as well, right? But like I remember, back in my younger days when I had a little less forehead, I did my Prince 2 certification because I wanted to learn how to manage projects properly. Because the hacking way that I was doing it didn't feel right, didn't feel very grown up. And if I learned anything, it was the way I was doing it was the right way. Enough methodology to get the job done, but not an inch more. Yeah, so look, I think we can rant a lot about that, but let's look, this is an equal opportunities rant. It's not just about project managers, right? Because I've seen this all over. So, okay, so maybe Scrum has too many meetings, maybe Lean got taken over by the finance people, but in the technical world, we've got DevOps, right? So that was supposed to bridge the gap between development and operations, and it was all going to be rainbows and happiness. But more often than not, what we saw was just teams rebranded in the same silos, but just with new names. And it might be SRE or DevOps or anything in between. Is it the same vibe? Is it the same thing happening, JT?
Well, I think DevOps, especially, or at least DevOps more focused in the technology tower, but Agile, right, as well, is this lovely toxic stew of I need to just do change, right? And change is always hard. I'm actually probably going to take over someone's bucket of money. I'm going to take people from them, like DevOps, right? All right. So we're going to do this thing where I'm going to take people resources, which equals money, perception of control, all of that good fun stuff. I'm going to take some from the VP of App Dev. I'm going to take some from the VP of Infra. There might be a fight between those two VPs of who's going to own it. The VP of Project Management, I just want to lock in a closet and don't want to hear from them for a little bit, right? All of that. And then, by the way, I mean, we made a flippant management to it, but when I was in a CIO role, dealing with the whole CFO finance aspect of this is huge, right? This idea of like every year I want to, let's face it, a year is arbitrary, but that's what our fiscal years run on, right? So I want to be able to tell me with accuracy, or at least false lies and make me think there's accuracy of what I'm going to get this year for this much output, right? And that's not what either of these are, right? The idea of Agile being, look at this capability, whether in the insurance world it's my enrollment capability or my claims capability or whatever the case may be, it is important. I'm willing to fund it to this level of this year. I'll get out of it what I can get out of it. And by the way, you are accountable for that bucket of money and you have to get me returns and all of that kind of stuff. I don't mean, like, there is some real reason why some of that's there. Right. And I want to move that whole, I'll say it, move everybody's cheese, right? But you're not moving their cheese. You're boxing it up and shipping it across continents. Right. And that's really hard. And you can get there, but then add in And this is the part that just has always driven me nuts. The quarterly reporting cycles, right? You're talking about a change to do this, right? That's really 3 years. It depends on the size of organization and what you're going to do. But if you're going to fundamentally change how we do what we used to call projects, or even just, how we tackle that in this DevOps world, you're not going to do that in a quarter. And you're going to have to spend more money before you save money, before you see that. And all of that just doesn't work when you got to report out to a stock analyst every quarter, or whoever that body may be. Right. And I know now, like, I'm fired up and going, but you bring in the compliance side of it, right? And I've seen a spot where we have to be compliant. Maybe it's a government industry framework, or it's SOC 2 or high trust, or insert your acronym, right? Compliance framework there. Those can be accelerants, or they're really convenient tools to passively aggressively maintain my whole world, right?
Mhm.
you know, HIPAA says we must do it this way. No, it doesn't. HIPAA is the very U.S. example, but it is a very easy regulation to read, even if you're not a lawyer. I promise it doesn't say you have to change a password, right? But I'm going to use that kind of control to say you can't do it this new way because this quote unquote industry framework says I need to. It all comes back to, if you're going to tackle all of these, right, you need to approach it from an organizational change management perspective in all of its forms, right? In my world, when I had the business transformation, I actually had to stand up an OCM team. We did all that analysis of find champions and all of that. And look, I admit that's like the safe way, right? The enterprise way of put a bunch of process into it to make it happen. I will say we were able to move the needle. Did we go as far as we wanted? No, but that worked. But then there's also the organizational change management philosophy, right? Our mutual friend, Tony McCulley, we were talking about this as part of the Slack rant the other day, right? Owned this really change-driven Home Depot team, and really he just had some open recs, so he just hired the people he needed, and he just kind of did it. He was high enough to make the change, but low enough to stay under the radar, and could finally, until he was ready to pop up and go, look at what I did, right? That's also a very effective way to do it. But I think you just have to be very deliberate about what you're trying to do. Why is it death of Agile? I think people are tired of fighting it, right? I think you also have the senior leaders who, frankly, aggressively or passively aggressively, have been fighting this, that are like, now, hey, look, see, it didn't work. Well, of course it didn't work. You did everything you could to stop it. But anyway, I need to shut up because that's on my rant, and turn it back over to you, Brian, for where do you want to go next on this crazy.
Can I say a couple of things, because this is really juicy? Firstly, I agree with you, JT, that we did a really poor job of branding DevOps and introducing it within the organization. All we did is took a knife to the org chart, moved people around, and said, this is the new DevOps team. And then we started putting labels and defining what they're doing. But the way we defined them was around tools and technologies rather than around the processes and what was meant to be delivered. Like, DevOps is about collaboration, it's about speed to delivery and making sure that everyone works together towards a singular focus of delivering business value. The minute you say DevOps team and have them focus on maybe Azure DevOps, or God forbid Jenkins, or GitHub Actions or GitLab and all these things, you are boiling them down to the lowest common denominator, which is a tool. And now when you have a tool, it is translated to, oh, this person just operates the tool, so adds no other value. And then you have this really shitty adage, which is do more with less. And that becomes a dangerous situation, because now you're removing the human operator out of the mix, and you think that your technology can solve it, because all this team is doing is operating that technology. What people tend to forget is, do more with less eventually is the actual adage. You need to make sure that your processes and your culture actually are so ingrained that it becomes effortless to just kick off something and then deploy value into production. And unfortunately, we don't have the time and patience to do it, because we are living quarter over quarter. We have to show results. And if we're not delivering value, what is the easiest way for an enterprise to show value? Fire a bunch of people. And then say, hey, look, we're prettier now because we slimmed down. We've lost a bunch of weight. But that's not sustainable. That is also another reason why we are struggling in this situation where we have these amazing things and then we crap all over it.
I think that's the thing, right? So, two really interesting points. I think number one is that organizations fundamentally are not well set up for change, and there's many reasons for that. I think the big one that I can hear here is that if you are in a position of leadership, you've come into a new role, the fastest and easiest way to demonstrate that you are making change is to buy another tool. Because you will get buy-in from people for new tools because we love some new and shiny. But it's not necessarily going to make the change that you want. And I think the flip side is also true, is that the culture change in large organizations is just hard. So it's much easier to look at the cool and groovy companies that we want to be like and just copy the tools that they've got. We're not going to think about what led them to choose those tools. We're just going to jump straight into buying them. And I think that's crazy. I think that is a good summation of where we've ended up with DevOps. But of course, that's not the full story, of course, is it? Because even now, in the current day, I'm spending a lot of time around platform engineering. And I'll be honest, I love platform engineering. I've been building platforms for the best part of 15 years. Before it was giving lots of fancy names, platform as a product, entrepreneurship, all of that good stuff. I absolutely believe in it. But my big fear is that I'm seeing vendors, I'm seeing enterprise, and I'm seeing teams begin to label themselves. It's got that same smell about it. Gotham, is platform engineering in trouble? Are we heading in the same direction?
I would, first of all, I got this visual image that I want to share with you all because it made me cringe. When you were talking about looking at all the newer technologies and newer cool companies and try to having enterprise implement the same thing, it reminded me of all the plastic surgeons and the amount of money they make with older people trying to look like really young 20, 25-year-olds. We need to value experience much more than just vanity things. But anyway, that was a cringe image that just came to my mind. But platform engineering. So, like you, I've also been involved a lot in platform engineering, and I'm seeing people and teams starting to brand themselves as platform engineers, and that is good. Calling yourself a platform engineer actually has a purpose, it has a reason, and it has a aspiration that you want to be. That is great. But then you have this platform engineering products that are being released, which are basically tools that platform engineers and the DevOps community has been using for ages and then adopting it. So we are very quickly going down the route of branding something as a tool and enterprises are definitely starting to convert it into some kind of a rigid one size fits all process. And so they're starting to strip away the true potential. But what I want to emphasize is it's not too late for platform engineering. The key to successful platform engineering is customer centricity. We need to remember that. Platform teams, however they are formed or created, whatever they name themselves as, need to think of themselves as product teams with developers as their customers if they're really going to embrace platform engineering. This means focusing on outcomes, how the platform can help developers deliver value, not just on outputs like feature completeness or technical sophistication, but the intrinsic and extrinsic value that the platform is providing the developers to create this business value. And so here are a couple of ways that we can proactively prevent platform engineering from suffering a similar fate. Obviously, there are much more of these, but here are the most important ones. The first one is focus on principles, not processes. We want to keep the emphasis on the core principles of platform engineering: scalability, flexibility, customer centricity, and alignment with the business outcomes, rather than we rigidly adhere to specific tools or methods. I've already started seeing people saying that, oh, my platform engineering team is all about GitHub Actions. No, that's a tool. You want to make sure that you are loosely coupled, but you're focusing on your principles of platform engineering. The next one that I believe is really important is we want to maintain that business alignment, right? We want to regularly reassess how platform engineering initiatives align with the organizational strategic goals. So if there is some new thing that you want to introduce, the first question we want to say is, how does it improve the delivery to business value? Does it increase my technical debt? What does it offset? So there are a number of questions that you can start asking to ensure that you're maintaining this business alignment. And then when you start keeping this platform engineers tightly integrated with business outcomes, it remains relevant and it becomes a powerful driver for innovation and value. And then the third one is you want to create a culture of continuous learning. You want to encourage people to continuously explore, experiment, and iterate. And this is really important because you want to constantly feed. This is where platform as a product approach comes in, where you're running experiments, and it becomes that cultural mindset that helps drive and evolve platform engineering as new technological advancements come on, while at the same time continuously questioning how is this going to help improve the business value. So these are three things. This is actually, I mean, believe it or not, this is what prompted me to write my upcoming book, Mastering Enterprise Platform Engineering. It's meant to be a strategic guide that takes people beyond the buzzwords and into the heart of what it truly means to build, scale, and sustain these powerful platforms in the dynamic enterprise landscape. And it's about mastering the art of creating resilient, flexible, future-ready platforms. And I share loads of insights, tools, strategies to ensure that enterprise transforms don't suffer the same fate of what we're seeing with enterprise agility. It's supposed to come out later this year.
That's phenomenal. Now, look, I know that your book is going to be great, but I'm a little bit worried that you're trying to turn this into, something that might be useful to someone. This is a rant. So straight back to the rant. I love what you're saying though, because what I'm hearing is our next episode is Backstage just a facelift?
Okay, yeah. I can jump into that because we're all into IDPs, right? Everyone's about internal developer platforms, portals, and somehow people tend to forget that a build versus buy is a real thing that you have to evaluate. Everyone wants to develop cool new shit, while that's not even their core business value. So I look forward to that. That's a great topic.
I was personally hoping for Kubernetes as the new Botox, but hey, we'll go with that. I do have to say, there's a spot right there next to your last book, Leading with Empathy, that after I read your book, I can't wait to display it and put it forward. So looking forward to it.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. All right. So look, I think one the big thing you said there that I think really is important is this idea about customer focus when you're building a platform team, because that's the big change, right? Whereas before we had teams that were involved in technology doing their thing really well, I think now with platform engineering, our focus is a little bit different, saying we are now going to serve customers, be that someone in the business. Now, I know from my own experience, I haven't exactly had a warm reception in some areas when I suggest that their job is going to be to serve developers. JT, what about you? What are your thoughts? How many operations teams or Kubernetes teams have you met that are customer focused?
It's a real mixed bag, right? And it comes back to some of the cultural issues we saw back in the DevOps days, right? Like I've kind of felt like half of DevOps was just to get the Hatfield and McCoys in the same room. Right. I think, there was some of that. So I see some customers that maybe have those legacy silos that have that political layer of frosting on them, that this becomes a challenge, right? Like I don't like Fred and Sally doesn't like me. And some of that just wants you to like, you just want to grab them and go be adults. But that's definitely a challenge. I am somewhat optimistic about platform engineering. I mean, enterprise antibodies are going to see the new thing and attack it. Like that's going to happen. But I think what really gives platform engineering a chance is that it is more, to say siloed, that is a negative connotation. The blast radius of change is potentially smaller, at least until it gets a solid footprint and has something to point to, have said, look, we did this, right? Which is the big challenge with enterprise agile and flipping everybody to DevOps. Is we talked about that time curve and how long it takes. Platform engineering, if you take this to extreme, you're gonna fail too, but can be largely contained within that VP of infra, right? Until it can change. That VP of infra can change his own organization to be customer focused and take on that, those people who are just don't quote unquote like developers or don't feel like they have to develop it. I mean, I do. I have some customers who are like, I'm going to build the best platform ever, and the developers will just want to use it. Well, maybe talk to them. That might be a good thing. But I think if you're that CTO, infra VP, whatever that level is, you can take it on with a lot of your own resources, right? Implement change with something that you have fully or most control over. Probably going to have to self-fund that, but I think you can do that. You can largely do it with people and resources you have, skills questions, of course. But you do have to lean into partnership with dev, right? You have to lead that change. You have to get that cultural piece in place. But it's not like DevOps where you're perceived or actually taking people from different organizations, taking budget from different organizations. Again, at least initially, right? At some point, you got to get chargebacks and all that. So you need them to kind of help pay for you, right? You need developers to help pay for you. But hopefully by that point, you've established a culture of partnership. You're starting to actually deliver on the platform, right? They can see what they're gonna get out of it. But a lot of the things we already talked about, and I know that Gotham is gonna write about, right? But you really have to lean into that with your own tower, right? What are the metrics of success? How are you bringing developers as your customers to the table, right? Even if you have to use those enterprise concepts of steering committees and have big bad words, right? But lean into it. They're there, right? Use that as kind of the Trojan horse to get in and have that conversation, and make sure you're avoiding, frankly, the resume driven development, right? Why are you doing Kubernetes? Well, I'm doing it because I want to, right? It's going to give me the next good role. No, because our application needs that automatic scaling, and my customers, the developers, have told me that their application needs some of these core capabilities. Well, that's a whole different story, right? And that's where you can start to be successful, and then kind of again pop your head up when the time is right and go, look at how awesome this is. By the way, you probably did it using agile methodologies and all of those kind of things. You just didn't have to go talk about it, right? Just do it, right? To steal Nike's marketing slogan from that. Overall, I would say I'm a little more optimistic about platform engineering just because that initial scope of change, that where you have to make that impact is small and within one or two people that if they're tightly partnered, scope of change, right? If you've got a good relationship with the CISO, for example, man, as a CTO, focus just on that platform, start to engage with development. They're going to be suspicious of you in the beginning if you've got those siloed problems, but you can use this, like I said, as that Trojan horse to kind of chip away at those things. That's why I feel pretty successful, right? It's not take everything the business wants to do and flip how we do it from waterfall to agile. That's tough. Within my little infra world, I'm going to start this platform engineering community and show how it can be successful. That's why I'm a little more optimistic about it.
No, that's a great point, JT. And I think, and with the three of us have talked about it, right? We want to make sure that we have the messaging right. With DevOps, we kind of missed the boat on that one, or we made it an afterthought. DevOps was truly about making sure that the developers and operators work together cohesively. But instead, we made it the dev versus the ops team, having two different circles, and people misinterpret it. I think with platform engineering, we're focusing on customer centricity, the customers being the developers or whoever's consuming the platform. And when we start showing that customer empathy and saying, hey, our platform is meant to make your lives better so that you can focus on your high value activity, how can we help? I think starting and messaging it that way, saying we are here to empower you and not to take away things from you or not to bring in control, because all of us are working towards a singular focus, which is the external customer or the consumer. I think once we start putting that messaging right and having conversations around the empathic approach of technology, I think we will not repeat the mistakes that we've done with agility and with DevOps.
Well, I can safely say I'm not sure if it's the reassuring words from you both, or whether it's just been the opportunity to rant for a good half hour on this, or maybe it's just I don't feel like I'm crazy. It feels like there's maybe more than one of us out there that see these things. I feel better about this. This is good. I can see the future. So let me wrap up because we're probably over time already. So I think what we're saying is, look, Agile, DevOps, platform engineering, they all started with the right intentions. It was all about breaking down silos, It's about getting people talking with one another, about focusing on customer needs and driving kind of continuous improvement all the way through rather than these big kind of projects. But as they became popular, they kind of got bogged down. And I'm going to be polite and say rigid frameworks or overcomplication. But what I mean is enterprise, but we won't get too caught up in the rant again. I think the thing is that the takeaway for me is frameworks are good. So there are some phenomenal books out there. So Team Topologies, I think, is probably the Bible just now on how to go about setting up your organization and understanding how to get teams talking to each other. I think Crossing the Chasm is a fantastic book around how to go about building a product in an organization and realizing that you can't just sell it to the one team the same way you sell it to the whole organization. So that's really interesting about how you need to change as you move forwards. And of course, Gotham, your book, Mastering Enterprise Platform Engineering, as soon as that comes out, I think that's going to be another great tome to help us kind of have the right guidance. The key thing, though, let's not forget, is we don't want to focus on the letter of those books or any framework in too much detail. We want to kind of get the core principles and extract the value out of them and build something that suits us, you know? I think there's hope, I think, for platform engineering that won't just be another trend, but I think a real driver for success. Anyway, let me wrap up there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And as always, please share your thoughts, stories with us on social media or in the comment section. Remember, whether it's technology, empathic leadership, or a beverage that you're currently on, it's the depth and the flavor of the journey that counts. Always make time to save the wisdom, one sip at a time. So, until next time, raise your glasses high and cheers the stories yet to be told.